What is the problem with game reviews nowadays? Let's find out. What's up guys, Canadian Guy A here, and back with a video talking about something that has been on my mind for a long time. Ever since my video of having my wife play Spyro to disprove Eurogamer's review of Spyro having the difficulty of Dark Souls, you guys seem to really like that content. So I wanted to dig a bit deeper. See, in my mind there seems to be a problem with gaming in journalism. Is it the articles, previews, or opinion pieces about certain deep aspects in gaming? Well, no, it's the reviews. Reviews are no doubt the most viewed pages on a gaming journalist's list. The reason is quite simple. Gaming is expensive, and people want to know if they want to invest their hard-earned money into a product that's going to be good. Why would they buy something at full price when they could invest their money into another product that would fulfill their gaming itch? Quite simply, people want to know if the game sucks or not. But the problem with reviews is that it can determine whether or not a game will be bought in the first place from customers. And if the game gets a handful of bad reviews from trusted sources, the people tend to veer away from these games, and it causes a large effect to the game and future of the company that developed it. Sometimes even the developers are given an incentive with how well the game does in terms of score. It doesn't even matter if the game's sales are decent, as long as the review score overall is good. Now, I don't want to talk and not provide any evidence of what I'm talking about, so let's dig into some examples of these practices. For reviews, most companies use Metacritic as the golden website for game reviews, as the website collects as many professional scores as possible and set it as a score out of 100. It then averages the scores and pop out a number that's once again overall out of 100. Thus, you can collectively see what everyone generally thinks by going to one website. It's not perfect, of course, but it works. For example, Cory Barlog, the writer and director of the recent God of War, released a reaction video to the score that God of War got on Metacritic, and he was crying. So as you could tell, this meant a lot to him.
93 Metacritic, that's 94 Metacritic. It changed when I
As I said, is an amalgamation of professional reviewers' opinions. However, though it works, the scores can be played around and can misrepresent the game by a few points, simply because some reviewers don't give a score but still give praise to the game. But how could a few points affect anything? Well, this is where one of the most talked about companies today comes into play: Bethesda. Obsidian, ironically the original creators of the Fallout games, were contracted out by Bethesda to create a fan favorite of the Fallout franchise, Fallout New Vegas. They were told that the company as a whole would only get bonuses if the game got a score of 85 points or more on Metacritic. They scored a whopping 84 points. That's right, a single point off of 85. And guess what? Bethesda did not pay up the bonuses to Obsidian. But this is a practice that is used throughout the industry and likely something that won't be changed anytime soon, as I had mentioned before, that reviews are the biggest pieces of gaming journalism. But what am I trying to say? That it was the reviewer's fault that maybe one person should have gave the game an 8 out of 10 instead of a 7 out of 10? Of course not! But what I am trying to say is that reviewers have much more power in the industry than maybe some think. Some rely their incomes on reviewers. A lot of people take these review sites for granted, but I don't think that people realize that how much impact that these people's words have. I think it was scummy that Bethesda didn't pay out for a single point missed on a website that talks of others' opinions of their product, because here's the thing, everyone has opinions, and they are all different. To base a bonus on what others think instead of what the company itself thinks of the product is, well, kinda lame. Bethesda should have looked at the game, and if they felt that the company did a good enough job, they should have gotten bonuses, and not rely on what the general public thinks. If Bethesda feels like it was a piece of product that they released and hit their bar of quality, they should have got their bonuses. So that would mean that if a game is being reviewed, and the studio's life and success depends on what the reviewers say, review companies are going to want to make sure that they have a strong and fair reporter to review the game, right? This is where we get to the main source of my problems in the game review industry, the experience of the reviewer and or reporter. This was my main spear point in my Spyro is Dark Souls experiment. The reviewer of the game over at Eurogamer compared the game to Dark Souls when it came to a certain boss. No, it was not Gulp or Spike, it was Buzz. I made my jokes about this already, I don't need to go into it again, but the video basically sums up to the fact that she was not experienced enough to really be reviewing games if they found the first boss in the third game as hard as Dark Souls in a game aimed for kids. But remember how I said that the reviewer score and review means so much to the success of the game? This is where it's a problem. See, we are giving possibly the collective future of some games and companies in the hands of some people who can't figure out how to beat one of the easiest bosses of all time. I am not saying all reviewers are like this, as I have so much respect for many of them, but these large-scale companies like Eurogamer, IGN, or GameSpot are signing off on these reviews and publishing them with their brand name behind it, basically giving the review a multi-million-dollar approval, so it carries weight behind it. Every review under these massive gaming journalism companies are done by different employees of said company. However, the review is looked over by the head editor and then approved. You never hear, hey, Jonathan Dornbush gave God of War a 10 out of 10. That literally holds no weight. But when you hear, hey, IGN gave God of War a 10 out of 10, even though it was Jonathan Dornbush that reviewed the game and it was a great review, his name holds no weight compared to IGN. But if your review score holds so much weight, wouldn't you want to make sure that you have the right person for the job? A reviewer that represents your company's values and knows that what they are talking about? You want to make sure that your reviews are as credible as possible. Otherwise, people stop visiting your site to hear your opinion if you sell them bad games and then they find out that they missed out on a fantastic game because you decided to give it a lousy score because the reviewer didn't know what they were talking about. The issues don't stop here, but inconsistent reviews from the same company over the same game. But how is this possible? Case in point, GameStop's review of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. See, the game that initially came to the Wii U scored a 6 out of 10, but then the game was ported to the Nintendo Switch and the game got a 9 out of 10? But how? It's literally the same game! The only thing added to the Switch version was Funky Kong mode. How could that add 3 points to the review? Even looking at the summary of the scores causes you to raise an eyebrow. The 6 out of 10 review gave 3 main negatives to the game. Dull derivative level design, employs some cheap and frustrating platforming tricks, harsh checkpoints during boss battles, while the 9 out of 10 version said nothing? No negatives? Not one? This doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. The problems with the original review had nothing to do with the console. It was all within the game. How could porting it to the Switch cause it to jump 3 points? We can see that the 6 out of 10 version was scored by Mark Walton, while the 9 out of 10 version was done by Peter Brown. These scores are drastically different. One score puts the game in the running for possibly a Game Award, and the other puts the game in the running for the top of the bargain bin 3 months after release. I understand people have different opinions, but there is obviously some form of bias going on here. Is it that Mark just sucked? Maybe Mark hates Nintendo? Or maybe Peter is a massive Nintendo fanboy? Or is there something else going on here? But once again, they are both sealed with IGN's seal of approval, saying they backed the opinion of these reviewers even though they reviewed the same game and gave a drastically different score. This once again comes to the issue that I mentioned before about the credibility of the reviewer, their skill set, interests, and of course, bias. We will never know the difference between Peter and Mark that caused them to rate the games the way they did, but something is happening here. One last thing I want to talk about is, well, it may not be the reviewer's fault at times about their opinions on the games, but the embargo. But what exactly is the embargo, and why would it not be the reviewer's fault because of it? See, I have reviewed a few games before where I got an early review code. You can cross-reference of when they came out, and they were all before the release date of the game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Spyro Reignited Trilogy, to name a few. So I understand how embargoes work and what they normally call for. An embargo is the date and time that the review and or gameplay is lifted for those who got an early review copy to show off gameplay and or send out their review. It's different for every company, however. Sometimes you're allowed to release the gameplay footage 2 days before the release of the game, and then the scored review can come out the day before the game releases, or the other way around. Sometimes you can release gameplay even upwards to a week before, and then a review the day of. It all varies. But sometimes you can get a review code for a game 4 days before the game is released. Sometimes with even more time, or even less time. Now, of course, if you want the most clicks, money, and renown, you're going to want to be the one to come out the gate with one of your contents on the time that the embargo lifts. So imagine getting a game with only 3 days to play it through entirely. Write a review, edit it, then voice it and edit it for a video review. See, 3 days may not be enough to get proper grasp of the game, especially large-scale games like Red Dead Redemption or Assassin's Creed. I'm not saying that they only had 4 days to do these games, but I'm just saying that if you were only given 4 days to review these games, you wouldn't be able to grasp it. If the reviewer feels like they are being rushed to get the game done, it may get the wrong score overall because the reviewer didn't get a chance to enjoy the game and maybe didn't get to complete it 100%. Or they wanted to take a break but couldn't take a break because they had such a limited amount of time and they got sick of the game in the short amount of time that they had to endlessly grind to finish it to get it done on time. These are just some of the problems with game reviews today. I have more issues that I would like to present, but that will be for another video. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. Cue the extra.